close your eyes and let us journey together into the ancient world of mountains. These magnificent giants that have stood watch over our planet for countless ages. When we think of mountains, we often imagine them as eternal and unchanging. But the truth is far more fascinating. Mountains are born, they grow, and eventually they fade away. The process takes millions upon millions of years, but it happens nonetheless. The Appalachian Mountains, which stretch across the eastern United States, were once as tall as the Himalayas are today. Can you imagine that? These gentle, rolling peaks were once towering giants that scraped the sky. But over 300 million years, wind and water have slowly worn them down, humbling these ancient sentinels into the softer forms we see today. The Himalayas, by contrast, are young. Geologically speaking, they're practically newborns. 50 million years ago, they didn't exist at all. The Indian subcontinent drifted northward across the ancient Tethys Ocean, moving slowly but inexorably until it collided with the Eurasian plate. And when two continental plates meet, neither wants to give way. Instead, the earth crumples upward like a rug pushed across a floor. And so the Himalayas were born, and remarkably, they're still growing. Every single year, Mount Everest rises approximately 4 millimeters higher. It's imperceptible to us, but the mountain is still reaching toward the heavens, still climbing skyward as the Indian plate continues its slow-motion collision with Asia. Speaking of Everest, let us rest for a moment on the heights of the world's tallest mountain above sea level. Standing at 8,849 meters, or 29,032 feet, Everest towers over everything around it. But here's something that might surprise you as you drift into relaxation. Everest isn't actually the tallest mountain on Earth. That title belongs to Mauna Kea, a volcanic mountain in Hawaii. While Mauna Kea's peak rises only about 4,200 meters above the Pacific Ocean, the mountain itself extends another 6,000 meters below the water's surface. From base to summit, Mauna Kea measures over 10,000 meters tall, making it taller than Everest when measured from its true base. It simply has the humility to hide most of its height beneath the waves. Mountains shape the weather in ways both subtle and profound. When moist air encounters a mountain range, it has nowhere to go but up. As the air rises, it cools, and the moisture condenses into clouds and rain. This is why one side of a mountain range is often lush and green, while the other side, in what we call the rain shadow, remains dry and barren. The Cascade Range in the Pacific Northwest demonstrates this beautifully. The western slopes receive abundant rainfall, nurturing temperate rainforests thick with moss and ferns, while just on the other side the land becomes high desert, receiving a fraction of the precipitation. As you breathe slowly and deeply, consider this. Mountains hold within them nearly 3/4 of the world's freshwater resources. Snow and ice accumulate on peaks during winter months, then gradually melt throughout spring and summer, feeding rivers that sustain billions of people downstream. The great rivers of Asia, the Ganges, the Indus, the Brahmaputra, the Yangtze, the Yellow River, all begin their journeys in the mountains, carrying life-giving water to the valleys below. And in these mountains, life finds a way to endure, even in the harshest conditions. At around 6,000 meters elevation, the air holds only half the oxygen that exists at sea level. Yet the Himalayan jumping spider has been found living at elevations up to 6,700 meters on Mount Everest, making it one of the highest dwelling creatures on Earth. It survives in this frozen, oxygen-poor environment by feeding on insects blown up the mountainside by the wind. Life, it seems, is far more tenacious than we might imagine. The mountains teach us patience. They teach us scale. They teach us that even the mightiest things in our world are temporary, that everything is in motion, however slowly. As you settle deeper into rest, let the mountains watch over you as they have watched over the earth for eons, silent and steady, beneath the turning stars. Let us climb higher now, not in body, but in mind, as we explore the zones of life that mountains create. Mountains are like worlds stacked upon worlds, each elevation band hosting its own unique community of life. At the base of a mountain, you might find forests thick with oak and maple, or in tropical regions, dense jungles alive with the calls of birds and monkeys. But as you ascend, the air grows thinner and colder, and the trees begin to change. Conifers take over, pine, spruce, and fir, trees that have adapted to shorter growing seasons and harsher conditions. These resilient evergreens can survive where deciduous trees cannot. And then if you climb higher still, you reach a boundary that has its own special name, the tree line, also called the timber line. This is the elevation beyond which trees can no longer grow. In the tropics, the tree line sits at around 4,000 meters, while in the Arctic regions it can be as low as sea level. Beyond this invisible threshold, the mountain enters its alpine zone, where only low-growing shrubs, grasses, and hardy wildflowers can survive the wind and cold. The wind at high elevations is a force unto itself. On mountain peaks, wind speeds regularly exceed 300 kilometers per hour, faster than the most powerful hurricanes that strike at sea level. Mount Washington in New Hampshire, though only 1,917 meters tall, once recorded a wind gust of 372 kilometers per hour, one of the highest wind speeds ever measured on Earth's surface. The mountain's position at the convergence of several major storm tracks creates conditions so extreme that scientists maintain a weather observatory there year-round, where researchers brave conditions that can feel like living on another planet. As you breathe slowly, in and out, consider the temperature. For every 1,000 meters you ascend up a mountain, the temperature drops by approximately 6.5 degrees Celsius. This means that even in equatorial regions, where the lowlands swelter in tropical heat, mountain peaks can be crowned with permanent snow and ice. Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania sits just 3 degrees south of the equator, yet its summit, rising 5,895 meters into the sky, is capped with glaciers. Though sadly, these glaciers are shrinking, and scientists estimate they may disappear entirely within the coming decades. Mountains have always held a sacred place in human culture. More than half of the world's major religions consider certain mountains to be holy. Mount Kailash in Tibet is revered by 4 religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and the ancient Bon tradition. Despite its relatively modest height of 6,638 meters, no one has ever climbed Mount Kailash. It's not that the mountain is technically impossible to climb. Rather, out of respect for its sacred status, the Chinese government has never issued a permit for anyone to attempt it. The mountain remains unclimbed, pristine, reserved for the realm of the divine. In Japan, Mount Fuji stands as both a cultural icon and an active volcano. This perfectly symmetrical peak rises 3,776 meters and can be seen from Tokyo on clear days. For centuries, ascending Mount Fuji was considered a sacred pilgrimage, and until the Meiji period in the 1800s, women were forbidden from climbing it, as the mountain was considered too holy for them to tread upon. Today, more than 300,000 people climb Mount Fuji each year during the brief summer climbing season, seeking not just the view from the summit, but a connection to something greater than themselves. The Olympic Mountains of Washington State receive some of the heaviest snowfall in the world. Mount Olympus itself sits less than 60 kilometers from the Pacific Ocean, and when storms roll in from the sea, they dump extraordinary amounts of moisture on the range. Some areas receive over 4,000 millimeters of precipitation annually, and in winter, this falls as snow. So much snow that it creates numerous glaciers despite the mountain's relatively modest elevation of around 2,400 meters. Mountains even influence human biology in fascinating ways. People who have lived at high altitudes for many generations have developed remarkable adaptations. Tibetans, for instance, have evolved unique hemoglobin characteristics that allow their blood to carry oxygen more efficiently in the thin mountain air. These genetic adaptations occurred over thousands of years, a testament to humanity's ability to not just survive, but thrive in the high places of the world. Similarly, the Sherpa people of Nepal possess exceptional high-altitude endurance, making them invaluable guides and mountaineers in the Himalayas. Rest now in the knowledge that mountains are more than stone and ice. They are shapers of weather, guardians of water, homes to countless forms of life, and sacred spaces that connect us to the infinite. Let their permanence ease your mind as you drift deeper into peaceful sleep. Deep beneath the surface of mountains lies a story written in stone, a chronicle of our planet's ancient past that we're only beginning to read and understand. Mountains are archives of time itself. In the rock layers of mountains, geologists have found fossils of sea creatures thousands of meters above the ocean. The summit of Mount Everest, that highest point on Earth, is made of limestone that formed at the bottom of the ancient Tethys Sea over 400 million years ago. Within that limestone are the fossilized remains of crinoids and trilobites, creatures that lived in warm, shallow waters when the continents were arranged in configurations we would barely recognize. The ocean floor became the roof of the world, a transformation so profound it seems almost like magic, yet it happened through the patient work of tectonic forces over unimaginable spans of time. Not all mountains are formed by the collision of tectonic plates. Volcanic mountains rise through a different kind of birth, one of fire rather than pressure. The Cascade Range that runs from British Columbia through Washington, Oregon, and into Northern California is a chain of volcanic peaks, each one a gateway to the molten heart of the Earth. Mount St. Helens demonstrated this dramatically in 1980, when it erupted with such force that it reduced its own height by 400 meters, from 2,950 meters to 2,550 meters. The eruption was so powerful that it was heard over 300 kilometers away, and ash fell across 11 states. Yet even in destruction, the mountain was simply being itself. Volcanic peaks are meant to erupt, to reshape themselves, to remind us that the Earth is alive and active beneath our feet. The longest mountain range on Earth is one that most people will never see. The mid-ocean ridge system stretches for over 65,000 kilometers beneath the world's oceans, winding through the Atlantic, Indian, Pacific, and Arctic oceans like a seam on a baseball. This underwater mountain chain marks the places where tectonic plates are pulling apart and new oceanic crust is being born. Hot magma rises from the Earth's mantle, cools, and forms new seafloor in a process called seafloor spreading. It's happening right now, as you rest here, new mountains being born in the darkness of the deep ocean, unseen but perpetually growing. Some mountains stand alone as solitary sentinels, while others gather in great ranges that stretch for thousands of kilometers. The Andes Mountain Range, running along the western edge of South America, extends for approximately 7,000 kilometers, making it the longest continental mountain range in the world. The Andes are home to countless peaks, many exceeding 6,000 meters in elevation, and they span 7 countries, creating barriers and bridges between Pacific coastal regions and the Amazon basin. The range is so extensive that it contains tropical glaciers in Colombia and Ecuador, while also reaching down to the cold, storm-battered peaks of Patagonia in the south. Within the Andes lies Lake Titicaca, straddling the border between Peru and Bolivia. At 3,812 meters above sea level, it is the highest navigable lake in the world. Large commercial vessels traverse its waters, and people have lived on its shores for thousands of years, adapting to life in the thin air. The lake is 190 kilometers long and contains over 40 islands, some of which are home to communities that have preserved ancient ways of life. Mountains create their own weather patterns, but they also preserve evidence of past climates locked away in ice. Ice cores drilled from mountain glaciers contain trapped air bubbles from thousands of years ago. By analyzing these bubbles, scientists can measure the composition of the atmosphere at different points in history. The Cuelca ice cap in the Peruvian Andes has provided ice cores revealing climate data going back 1,800 years. Each layer of ice is like a page in a book, telling us about temperatures, precipitation, volcanic eruptions, and even human activities from centuries past. As you sink deeper into tranquility, imagine the color of mountain lakes, those impossibly brilliant blues and greens that seem almost unreal. Many alpine lakes get their stunning colors from glacial flour, finely ground rock particles created when glaciers scrape against the mountainside. These microscopic particles remain suspended in the water, and they scatter sunlight in ways that create those ethereal turquoise and emerald hues. Lake Louise in the Canadian Rockies and Peyto Lake in Banff National Park are famous for these colors, drawing visitors who stand in wonder at the shore, gazing at waters that seem to glow from within. The air grows thinner, your breathing slows and deepens, and the mountains stand eternal in your mind's eye. These patient giants that have witnessed the entire story of human civilization and will continue standing long after our time has passed into memory. Let us wander now into the realm of snow and ice, where mountains wear their crowns of white throughout the seasons, preserving secrets in their frozen heights. A glacier is a river of ice, but one that flows so slowly you could watch for an entire lifetime and never see it move. Yet move it does. Under its own immense weight, ice behaves almost like a very thick liquid, creeping downhill at rates that might be just a few centimeters per day, or in some fast-flowing glaciers, several meters. The Lambert Glacier in Antarctica is the world's largest glacier, stretching over 400 kilometers long and up to 100 kilometers wide. If you were to stand at its edge, you would be looking at more ice than exists in all of the European Alps combined, a frozen river that has been flowing for thousands upon thousands of years. Mountains hold approximately 70% of the world's freshwater ice. Imagine that, nearly 3/4 of all the ice on our planet's surface, excluding the great ice sheets of Antarctica and Greenland, rests upon mountains. These frozen reservoirs are crucial for billions of people. During dry seasons, when rain fails to fall, mountain glaciers continue to melt gradually, feeding rivers and sustaining agriculture and cities in the lowlands below. It's a gift that mountains give generously, though one we're learning may not last forever. The snow line, the elevation above which snow remains year-round, varies dramatically depending on where you are on Earth. At the equator, the permanent snow line sits at around 5,000 meters, while in Antarctica, it can exist at sea level. This variation happens because temperature decreases as you move away from the equator toward the poles. In the European Alps, the snow line rests at approximately 2,800 meters. Above this line, winter's snow never fully melts, and over centuries it compresses into glacial ice, layer upon layer, building those blue-white rivers that carve valleys and shape the landscape. Some mountains are so remote, so challenging to reach, that they remained unclimbed until remarkably recently. Gangkhar Puensum, which straddles the border between Bhutan and China, stands 7,570 meters tall and holds a unique distinction. It is the highest unclimbed mountain in the world. Bhutan banned mountaineering in 1994 out of respect for local spiritual beliefs, and so Gangkhar Puensum remains untouched, its summit known only to the clouds and sky. In our modern age, where humans have set foot on the moon and sent robots to Mars, there is something humbling about knowing there are still peaks on Earth where no human has ever stood. Mountains influence precipitation patterns on a truly massive scale. The Himalayas serve as a colossal barrier that blocks moisture-laden monsoon winds from the Indian Ocean, forcing them to rise and release their rain on the southern slopes. This creates some of the wettest places on Earth. Mawsynram, a village in the Indian state of Meghalaya, sits on the southern slope of the Himalayas at about 1,400 meters elevation and receives an average annual rainfall of approximately 11,872 millimeters, nearly 12 meters of rain each year. Meanwhile, just on the other side of the Himalayan range, the Tibetan Plateau remains one of the driest places in Asia, receiving less than 130 millimeters of rain annually in some areas. The same mountain range creates both deluge and desert. In the silent peaks, avalanches write their stories in snow and stone. An avalanche can reach speeds of 130 kilometers per hour within just 5 seconds of starting, and the largest avalanches can carry millions of tons of snow down a mountainside. The powder cloud that accompanies a large avalanche can create winds strong enough to flatten forests, even in areas the snow itself doesn't reach. Yet despite their power and danger, avalanches are a natural part of mountain ecosystems, clearing slopes and creating spaces where new vegetation can grow. Mountains even affect the rotation of the Earth itself, though in ways so subtle we could never feel them. Large earthquakes that shift mountain ranges can slightly alter the distribution of mass on Earth's surface. The 2011 earthquake in Japan, which was centered offshore but affected mountainous regions, actually shifted Earth's axis by about 17 centimeters and shortened the length of a day by 1.8 microseconds. Changes so minute that only our most precise instruments can detect them, yet real nonetheless. The shadows grow longer now. The peaks fade into silhouette against the darkening sky, and you feel yourself floating, weightless, drifting between waking and sleep, cradled by the ancient presence of these stone mountains that know neither hurry nor worry, only the slow dance of geological time. In the quiet of the mountain night, life persists in ways that seem almost impossible, adapting to conditions that would defeat most creatures on Earth. The snow leopard walks these high places like a ghost, padding silently through terrain where the air holds so little oxygen that most animals could not survive. These magnificent cats live at elevations between 3,000 and 4,500 meters in the mountains of Central Asia, though they've been spotted as high as 5,500 meters. Their fur is thick and pale, marked with rosettes that help them vanish into the rocky, snow-dusted landscape. A snow leopard's tail is almost as long as its entire body, serving as both a balance aid on treacherous slopes and a warm wrap that the cat can curl around itself when sleeping in temperatures that plunge far below freezing. So elusive are these creatures that they're sometimes called ghosts of the mountains, and many people who have spent their entire lives in snow leopard territory have never seen one. High above where even snow leopards roam, there exists a realm so hostile to life that it has its own name, the death zone. This term describes elevations above 8,000 meters, where the atmospheric pressure is so low that the human body begins to die, slowly but inevitably. At this altitude, there's only about 1/3 the oxygen available at sea level. The body cannot acclimatize to these conditions. It can only endure them temporarily. Climbers who venture into the death zone must carry supplemental oxygen or risk their organs slowly shutting down. Even with oxygen, time spent above 8,000 meters takes a profound toll. There are 14 peaks on Earth that reach into the death zone, all of them in the Himalayas and the neighboring Karakoram Range, and each one represents an extreme test of human endurance. Mountains create microclimates, small pockets of weather that can be dramatically different from surrounding areas. A single mountain can have its sunny, warm side and its permanently shadowed, cold side, creating environments as different as summer and winter just a few hundred meters apart. In the Grand Canyon, which is carved between mountain plateaus, you can experience a temperature difference of up to 15 degrees Celsius between the rim and the canyon floor, a vertical distance of about 1,500 meters. This variation allows for an extraordinary diversity of life zones within a relatively small area. The Matterhorn, one of the most photographed mountains in the world, stands 4,478 meters tall on the border between Switzerland and Italy. Its distinctive pyramidal shape has made it an icon of the Alps, but that shape is no accident. The Matterhorn is a glacial horn, formed when glaciers carved into the mountain from multiple sides, creating steep faces that converge at a sharp peak. The same process has created similar peaks throughout the world's glaciated mountain ranges. What makes the Matterhorn particularly striking is the symmetry with which erosion sculpted it, creating that almost perfect pyramid that seems to pierce the sky. Deep within mountains, caves extend for incredible distances, carved by underground rivers over millions of years. The world's deepest known cave, Vyrovkina Cave in the Caucasus Mountains of Georgia, descends 2,212 meters below the surface, deeper than 6 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other. Exploring such caves requires expeditions that can last weeks, as cavers rappel down seemingly endless shafts and squeeze through passages carved by ancient waters. These caves are windows into the hidden architecture of mountains, revealing that these masses are not solid throughout, but riddled with chambers and passages like frozen sponges. Mountains also preserve ice that is unimaginably old. The ice at the bottom of some glaciers has been frozen for over 800,000 years. Within this ancient ice are trapped air bubbles containing atmospheric samples from before modern humans walked the Earth, offering us glimpses of the planet's climate spanning multiple ice ages. Scientists drilling ice cores in Antarctica have retrieved ice that dates back 800,000 years, but mountain glaciers also hold valuable records, though typically spanning shorter time scales. Mount Kilimanjaro's glaciers, which have existed for approximately 11,700 years, are rapidly disappearing. In 1912, the mountain was covered by 12 square kilometers of ice. By 2011, only 1.76 square kilometers remained, a loss of more than 85%. Scientists estimate that within a few decades, Kilimanjaro may be entirely free of ice for the first time in over 10,000 years, a visible marker of our changing climate written clearly on one of Africa's most iconic peaks. In the stillness of high altitude, where the air is thin and sound travels differently, you might hear the mountain itself, not speaking but breathing, settling, creaking under its own tremendous weight. Let that sound, real or imagined, lull you deeper into rest, knowing that mountains, for all their solidity, are never truly still. They shift and settle, they grow and erode, they breathe with the glaciers that expand in winter and contract in summer, alive in their own slow geological way. As darkness settles over the peaks, let us turn our attention to the people who have made mountains their home, who have learned to read the language of stone and snow, and who carry stories passed down through countless generations. The highest permanent human settlement in the world is La Rinconada, Peru, a gold mining town perched at an altitude of 5,100 meters in the Andes Mountains. More than 50,000 people live in this community, existing in conditions that seem almost alien. At this elevation, water boils at just 83 degrees Celsius instead of 100, making cooking a challenge. The thin air means that physical exertion becomes exhausting within moments. Children are born here and grow up in an environment where every breath requires more effort than it would at sea level, their bodies adapting to conditions that would leave most visitors gasping and dizzy. Mountains have served as natural fortresses throughout human history, offering protection and isolation to those who knew their paths and passes. The Inca Empire built Machu Picchu at an elevation of 2,430 meters in the Peruvian Andes, nestled between two peaks and surrounded by nearly vertical cliffs on three sides. Built in the 15th century and abandoned just over 100 years later during the Spanish conquest, the site remained largely unknown to the outside world until 1911. The engineering required to construct such a city in such a location is remarkable. The Incas carved terraces into the mountainside, developed sophisticated drainage systems, and transported massive stones up steep slopes without the benefit of wheels or draft animals. In the Himalayas, mountain passes have served as gateways between civilizations for thousands of years. The Khyber Pass, connecting Afghanistan and Pakistan through the Hindu Kush Mountains, has been used by traders, armies, and migrants for over 3,000 years. At its highest point, the pass reaches approximately 1,070 meters, threading through mountains that tower thousands of meters higher on either side. Alexander the Great marched through the Khyber Pass in 326 BCE, as did countless others throughout history, each leaving their mark on this corridor between worlds. The Alps, though smaller than the Himalayas or Andes, have their own remarkable statistics. This mountain range, stretching approximately 1,200 kilometers across 8 countries, is home to around 14 million people. The Alps are one of the most densely populated mountain regions in the world, with villages, towns, and cities tucked into valleys and perched on slopes. The mountains here have been extensively studied, mapped, and understood for centuries, yet they still hold secrets and still command respect from all who venture into their heights. Mount Rainier, in Washington state, is considered one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world, not because of the immediate likelihood of eruption, but because of what would happen if it did erupt. The mountain is covered by 35 square kilometers of glaciers and snowfields, more glacial ice than all the other Cascade volcanoes combined. An eruption, or even a significant earthquake, could melt this ice rapidly, creating catastrophic lahars, volcanic mudflows that could travel down valleys at speeds exceeding 80 kilometers per hour, potentially reaching populated areas within hours. More than 150,000 people live in areas that could be affected by lahars from Mount Rainier. The phenomenon of mountain reversal, or temperature inversion, creates some of the most beautiful atmospheric displays in mountain regions. Normally, temperature decreases with altitude, but under certain conditions, a layer of warm air can sit above cold air trapped in valleys. When this happens, clouds form at the boundary between the two air masses, creating the appearance of a sea of clouds with mountain peaks rising above like islands. Visitors standing on peaks during inversions find themselves literally above the clouds, looking down on a white, billowing ocean that fills the valleys below, while the sun shines brilliantly in the clear air above. Mountains play host to some of the oldest living organisms on Earth. Bristlecone pine trees, which grow in the White Mountains of California at elevations between 2,800 and 3,400 meters, can live for over 5,000 years. The oldest known living bristlecone pine, named Methuselah, is estimated to be 4,853 years old. It was already ancient when the pyramids of Egypt were being built. These trees survive in harsh, windswept conditions where few other plants can grow. They're twisted, gnarled forms shaped by millennia of storms and seasons. The very harshness of their environment contributes to their longevity. Growth is so slow in these conditions that the wood becomes incredibly dense and resistant to decay. Let your mind wander now through valleys blanketed in clouds, past ancient trees that have witnessed 50 centuries of sunrises, along passes worn smooth by the footsteps of countless generations. The mountains hold all of this and more, patient and eternal, watching over the world as you drift into the peaceful realm of dreams. In the deep night of the mountains, where stars shine with an intensity unknown in the lowlands, let us explore the ways mountains shape not just the land, but the very air we breathe and the water we drink. Mountains are the birthplace of rivers. Nearly all of the world's major river systems begin their journey as tiny streams trickling from mountain snowmelt or springs. The Amazon River, the largest river by volume in the world, begins as a small stream in the Peruvian Andes at an elevation of approximately 5,170 meters on the slopes of Nevado Mismay. From this humble beginning, the water travels over 6,400 kilometers across South America, gathering tributary after tributary, until it flows into the Atlantic Ocean, carrying nearly 20% of all the freshwater that enters the world's oceans. The journey from mountain peak to ocean encompasses one of the most biodiverse regions on Earth, all beginning with melting snow in the high Andes. The concept of orographic lift explains why mountains are so effective at wringing moisture from the air. As air masses encounter a mountain range, they're forced upward. As air rises, it expands and cools at a rate of about 10 degrees Celsius per 1,000 meters, a phenomenon meteorologists call the dry adiabatic lapse rate. When the air cools enough, the water vapor it carries condenses into clouds and eventually precipitation. This is why the windward sides of mountain ranges are typically lush and green, while the leeward sides lie in rain shadows, receiving far less moisture. K2, the second highest mountain on Earth at 8,611 meters, is considered by many mountaineers to be far more difficult and dangerous to climb than Everest. The mountain, located in the Karakoram Range on the border between Pakistan and China, has a fatality rate of approximately 1 death for every 4 successful summits, far higher than Everest's ratio. The mountain's extreme weather, technical climbing challenges, and remote location have earned it the nickname Savage Mountain. Unlike Everest, which can have hundreds of climbers attempting it in a single season, K2 sees far fewer attempts, and many of the world's best mountaineers consider it the ultimate challenge. Mountains influence atmospheric circulation patterns on a planetary scale. The Tibetan Plateau, often called the roof of the world, has an average elevation of over 4,500 meters and covers an area of approximately 2.5 million square kilometers, about 1/4 the size of the United States. This massive elevated landmass affects the Asian monsoon system, which brings life-giving rains to billions of people. During summer, the plateau heats up, creating a massive area of low pressure that draws in moisture-laden air from the Indian Ocean. The complex interaction between this elevated heating and the surrounding atmosphere helps drive one of the most important weather patterns on Earth. In the northern reaches of Scandinavia, The mountains may not rival the Himalayas in height, but they create their own unique phenomena. The midnight sun occurs in summer when these high-latitude mountains remain illuminated around the clock, while winter brings the opposite, polar night, when the sun doesn't rise for weeks or even months. The interplay of mountains and latitude creates landscapes where reindeer graze under the never-setting summer sun, and the aurora borealis dances across winter skies above snow-covered peaks. Mountain environments harbor unique mineral deposits formed under extreme conditions of heat and pressure. Gold, silver, copper, and countless other minerals concentrate in mountain regions, formed by hydrothermal activity, metamorphism, and the movement of mineral-rich fluids through cracks in the rock. The Andes Mountains are particularly rich in mineral resources, hosting some of the largest copper deposits in the world. The formation of these deposits often required millions of years and specific geological conditions that only occurred in mountain-building regions. The treacherous nature of high-altitude mountaineering is illustrated by the fact that approximately 300 people have died attempting to climb Mount Everest since records began. Many of these bodies remain on the mountain, preserved by the cold and serving as somber landmarks for climbers who follow. The difficulty of rescue and recovery at extreme altitude means that the mountain has become, in some ways, a frozen memorial to those who challenged its heights. Glacial valleys carved by ice over thousands of years create some of the most spectacular mountain scenery. Yosemite Valley in California's Sierra Nevada is a textbook example of a U-shaped glacial valley, with steep, nearly vertical walls rising over 900 meters from the valley floor. The valley was carved by glaciers during the ice ages, with the most recent glaciation ending approximately 15,000 years ago. The same glacial action that carved the valley also created Yosemite's famous waterfalls. Yosemite Falls drops 739 meters, making it one of the tallest waterfalls in North America. Close your eyes more fully now and feel the cool mountain air against your skin. Hear the distant sound of waterfalls cascading down granite cliffs. Sense the timeless presence of peaks that have stood for millions of years and will stand for millions more. Let the mountains cradle you in their ancient arms as sleep draws ever closer. In the quiet darkness, where the boundary between waking and dreaming grows thin as mountain air, let us journey to the places where mountains meet the sky, where the earth reaches upward as if trying to touch the stars. The Rocky Mountains stretch for approximately 4,800 kilometers from northern British Columbia in Canada down to New Mexico in the United States, making them one of the longest mountain ranges in North America. This vast chain contains over 100 separate mountain ranges, each with its own character, its own peaks and valleys. The Rockies are relatively young in geological terms. They began forming about 80 million years ago during the Laramide orogeny, a period of mountain building that reshaped the western portion of North America. When dinosaurs still walked the earth, these mountains were just beginning their slow rise toward the sky. Mountains create their own sound. The wind whistling through peaks and passes, the crack of shifting ice, the rumble of rockfall, the silence of new-fallen snow, each contributes to the acoustic landscape of high places. In some mountain cultures, people have learned to communicate across vast distances using yodeling, a form of singing that carries remarkably well in mountain terrain. The Swiss Alps are famous for this tradition, where the distinctive alternation between chest voice and falsetto can echo across valleys, carrying messages from peak to peak. Denali, formerly known as Mount McKinley, rises 6,190 meters above sea level in Alaska, making it North America's tallest peak. But what makes Denali truly extraordinary is its vertical rise from base to summit. approximately 5,500 meters, one of the largest base-to-peak elevations of any mountain in the world that sits entirely above sea level. Everest may be taller in absolute terms, but it rises from the Tibetan Plateau, which is already at high elevation. Denali rises from much lower terrain, creating a vertical relief that is visually and physically staggering. The oldest mountains on Earth have been worn down by time into gentle hills that barely resemble their former grandeur. The Barberton Greenstone Belt in South Africa contains rocks that are approximately 3.5 billion years old, formed when Earth was less than a quarter of its current age. These ancient formations were once part of mountain ranges that may have rivaled or exceeded the Himalayas in scale, but billions of years of erosion have reduced them to their roots. What remains are the deep foundations of mountains that stood when Earth's atmosphere was still being shaped, when the only life was microscopic, existing in oceans that covered most of the planet. Mountain goats, despite their name, are not true goats but belong to a different taxonomic group more closely related to antelopes. These remarkable animals live year-round in some of North America's most rugged terrain, at elevations up to 4,000 meters. Their hooves have a hard outer shell and a soft, rubbery inner pad that provides exceptional grip on steep, rocky surfaces. Mountain goats can climb slopes that appear nearly vertical, moving with confidence across terrain where a human would need ropes and climbing gear. They descend cliffs that would terrify most creatures, seeking mineral-rich salt licks on cliff faces, where they supplement their diet with essential minerals. In Japan's northern Alps, the Japanese macaque, or snow monkey, has adapted to life in mountainous regions where winter temperatures regularly drop below freezing. These monkeys are famous for bathing in natural hot springs, sitting neck-deep in steaming water while snow falls around them and accumulates on their heads. They live in troops in forests at elevations up to 1,500 meters, making them the most northern living non-human primates in the world. Their thick fur and social behaviors help them survive in conditions that would challenge many other primate species. The Great Dividing Range in Australia runs for over 3,500 kilometers along the eastern coast, making it one of the longest mountain ranges in the world, and by far the longest in Australia. Unlike many of the world's dramatic mountain ranges, the Great Dividing Range consists mostly of low, rolling hills and plateaus, with only a few peaks exceeding 2,000 meters. Mount Kosciuszko, Australia's tallest mainland mountain, rises to just 2,228 meters, modest by global standards, but significant in a continent where much of the landscape is flat or gently rolling. The sound of silence in mountains is different from silence anywhere else. At high elevations, the thin air carries sound differently, and in remote areas untouched by human activity, the quiet can be so profound it seems almost to have substance. In this silence, your heartbeat becomes audible, your breathing sounds loud in your own ears, and you become aware of the vast stillness that pervades these high places, a stillness that has existed since long before humans walked the earth. Drift now deeper into that silence, into that space between thoughts where mountains stand eternal in the darkness, their peaks lost in stars, their valleys cradled in shadow. Let sleep come as gently as snow falling on distant summits, soft and quiet and inevitable. In the deepest part of the night, where dreams and mountains merge into one, let us wander through the final mysteries these ancient giants hold, secrets written in stone and ice, and the patient passage of time. The Alps grow by approximately 1 millimeter per year, a growth so slow that a human lifetime would see them rise by less than the width of 3 fingers. Yet this relentless, imperceptible growth continues, driven by the collision of the African and Eurasian tectonic plates. In a million years, these mountains will stand perhaps 1 kilometer taller than they do today, a blink of an eye in geological time, yet an eternity in human terms. The mountains teach us that growth need not be dramatic to be real, that persistence, patient and unwavering, shapes the world. Annapurna I in Nepal, standing 8,091 meters tall, has one of the highest fatality rates of any 8,000er peak. Approximately 32% of those who reach the summit die on the mountain. This deadly reputation comes from the mountain's avalanche-prone slopes, unpredictable weather, and technical difficulty. The first ascent of Annapurna in 1950 by Maurice Herzog and Louis Lachenal was also the first successful ascent of any peak over 8,000 meters, marking the beginning of a new era in mountaineering history. Mountains trap and preserve history in unexpected ways. In 1991, hikers in the Alps discovered the frozen remains of a man who had died approximately 5,300 years ago. Known as Ötzi the Iceman, his body and belongings were preserved in glacial ice, providing an extraordinarily detailed snapshot of life in the Copper Age. The ice revealed his clothing, tools, food, even the contents of his last meal. Without the preserving cold of the high mountains, this window into ancient history would never have existed. The Drakensberg Mountains in South Africa contain thousands of rock art paintings created by the Sand People over thousands of years. These mountains, with peaks reaching over 3,000 meters, served as both home and canvas for ancient peoples who left behind images of animals, hunts, and spiritual visions. The name Drakensberg means Dragon Mountains in Afrikaans, inspired by the jagged, tooth-like appearance of the peaks when viewed from a distance. The Zulu name for the range, Ukalamba, means barrier of spears, another testament to the imposing nature of these peaks. In the mountain fastness, time itself seems to slow. The thin air, the vast vistas, the silence broken only by wind or the cry of a distant bird, all conspire to create a sense of timelessness. Research has shown that at high altitudes, time actually does pass slightly faster due to the effects of gravity as described by Einstein's theory of relativity. The difference is minuscule. A person living their entire life at high altitude would age perhaps microseconds more than someone at sea level. But it's real, measurable, another way in which mountains exist slightly apart from the ordinary world. Mountains are biodiversity hotspots, containing a disproportionate amount of the world's species in relatively small areas. The tropical Andes, for instance, are home to approximately 1/6 of all plant species on Earth, compressed into an area that represents less than 1% of the planet's land surface. As elevation changes, climate zones stack upon each other, creating numerous ecological niches in close proximity. A journey from the base of a tropical mountain to its summit can encompass the same climate zones you would experience traveling from the equator to the Arctic Circle. Mount Erebus in Antarctica is the southernmost active volcano on Earth, standing 3,794 meters tall. Its summit hosts a persistent lava lake, one of only a few in the world, where molten rock churns and glows, a beacon of heat in one of the coldest places on the planet. The contrast is almost poetic, fire and ice existing side by side, the mountain breathing both flame and frost. The Urals, stretching approximately 2,500 kilometers from the Arctic Ocean to the steppes of Kazakhstan, serve as the traditional boundary between Europe and Asia. These ancient mountains, formed over 300 million years ago, are among the oldest mountain ranges still standing, though erosion has reduced them to relatively modest heights, with the tallest peak, Mount Narodnaya, reaching just 1,895 meters. where the Himalayas are the energy of youth, all sharp peaks and dramatic relief. The Urals are the wisdom of age, worn smooth by time but still standing, still marking boundaries, still dividing continents. Let your breathing synchronize now with the rhythm of mountains, slow, steady, eternal. Feel yourself becoming lighter, as if the thin air of high peaks has lifted you beyond the weight of the waking world. The mountains stand watch over your rest, as they have stood watch over countless sleepers throughout the ages, silent guardians in the night. As we approach the end of our journey through the realm of mountains, let us rest in the knowledge of these final truths, these last quiet revelations before sleep claims you completely. The Caucasus Mountains, stretching between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, contain Mount Elbrus, which at 5,642 meters is the highest peak in Europe when using the most common geographical definition of the Europe-Asia boundary. This dormant volcano, covered in permanent snow and ice, has been considered sacred for thousands of years. In Greek mythology, it was believed to be the mountain where Prometheus was chained as punishment for giving fire to humanity, his eternal torment playing out on these icy slopes. Mountains continue to reveal new species even in our modern age of exploration. In 2010, scientists discovered a new species of snub-nosed monkey in the mountains of northern Myanmar, living at elevations up to 4,000 meters. The Myanmar snub-nosed monkey sneezes when it rains because water gets into its upturned nose. Locals had long reported seeing monkey ghosts that sneezed in the rain, and these reports eventually led scientists to the discovery. The mountains still hold creatures unknown to science, waiting quietly to be found. The Pamir Mountains, often called the roof of the world, along with the nearby Tibetan Plateau, are where some of the world's greatest mountain ranges converge. Here, the Himalayas, Karakoram, Hindu Kush, and Tian Shan all meet, creating one of the most dramatic confluences of peaks anywhere on Earth. The region contains numerous peaks over 7,000 meters and serves as a crossroads of Central Asian geography and culture. In the Sierra Nevada of California, giant sequoia trees grow on mountain slopes at elevations between 1,400 and 2,150 meters. These are the largest trees by volume on Earth, with some individuals exceeding 1,500 tons in weight and living for over 3,000 years. They grow only in a narrow elevation band on the western slopes of these mountains, dependent on the specific climate conditions found there. Enough moisture from winter snow, but not so much that the ground stays saturated. Mountains create these precise conditions, these perfect niches where giants can grow. The northern lights, or aurora borealis, are particularly spectacular when viewed from mountains in high-latitude regions. The elevation provides clearer air and darker skies, free from light pollution, allowing the shimmering curtains of green, purple, and red to display their full majesty. In places like Norway's Lofoten Islands, mountains rise directly from the sea, and the aurora dances above peaks that are reflected in the still waters below, creating mirror images of celestial beauty. Mount Vesuvius near Naples, Italy, standing just 1,281 meters tall, is one of the most closely monitored volcanoes in the world. More than 3 million people live in its vicinity, and the mountain's eruption in 79 CE, which buried the Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum, serves as a reminder of the destructive power that can lie dormant within even modest peaks. The mountain last erupted in 1944, and scientists watch it constantly, knowing that when it awakens again, the consequences could be catastrophic. The mountain called Nanga Parbat in Pakistan, standing 8,126 meters tall, is known as the Killer Mountain, due to the high number of fatalities that occurred during early attempts to climb it. The mountain's Rupal face is the tallest mountain face in the world, rising approximately 4,600 meters from base to summit in a single, nearly vertical wall of rock and ice. To stand at the bottom and look up at such a wall is to understand the true meaning of the word mountain. In the Altai Mountains, which stretch across Russia, Mongolia, China, and Kazakhstan, archaeologists have discovered burial mounds, called kurgans, that date back thousands of years. The cold mountain environment has preserved the contents remarkably well, including textiles, wooden artifacts, and even tattooed skin. These mountains serve as freezers for history, keeping the past intact in their cold embrace. Mountains remind us that the Earth is not static but dynamic, that continents drift and collide, that the ground beneath our feet is in constant motion, however imperceptibly. They stand as evidence of forces so powerful and processes so patient that they reshape the face of the planet. And yet, for all their grandeur and might, mountains are also places of profound peace, where silence reigns and the distractions of the modern world fall away. As we reach the end of our journey, let the mountains carry you now into sleep. 100 facts we have shared, 100 small windows into the vast truth of these giants. But the mountains hold infinitely more stories, more secrets, more silent wisdom than could ever be told. They will still be standing tomorrow when you wake, and they will stand for countless tomorrows after that, patient and eternal. Rest now. Let the mountains watch over you. Let their ancient presence comfort you. Let sleep come as naturally as snow falling on distant peaks, as inevitably as ice forming in high valleys, as peacefully as dawn light touching the highest summits of the world. The mountains whisper, rest, sleep, dream. And in your dreams may you wander among peaks that touch the sky, through valleys where time moves slowly, across high places where the air is clear and the view extends forever. Sleep now, the mountains are watching, and all is well.